the billionaire class, you can't have it all.
Ladies and gentlemen, oh my goodness, it's been so long, guys. I mean, we didn't have a show for the last 2 weeks straight. Oh god, it was rough, man. I was really, really missing doing this show so much. And I believe my buddy Jordan did too. Didn't you, Jordan?
Yeah, man, I can't even lie. I felt like something was missing.
Yeah. It was a hard 2 weeks. I will say.
I have so much. I just have so much to say.
Yeah. So much to recap.
Built up inside of me.
But then, some people that are usual frequent guests or maybe co-hosts on the show at this point kind of didn't feel like it was important enough, and he got all sick this morning. What a jerk. Who does that? I mean, you have a podcast to do tonight, and you get sick instead. What a jerk.
He probably willfully let a baby cough in his mouth. It went good.
Oh, God, guys, I'm so sick right now. Oh, I can't do the show. Oh, God, it hurts. Oh, by the way, wait, where is it?
I want Britain to be back British.
I think that's where Michael is right now, in the grand scheme of things. But did you hear that Mr. Donald Trump, our president of the United States, has retweeted some far right wing crazy people in Britain. This little group called Britain First, who were actually terrorists, and actually, I believe there was a Congress or a member of Parliament over there that was actually shot and killed by one of these Britain First types. And our president retweeted some shit that they posted that was, from what I remember hearing, a bit racist and a bit effed up. And
inaccurate.
Yeah. So that happened.
Inaccurate.
Yeah. Well, usually the crazy right-wing idiots are not very correct on what they say and post and do and all that. But yeah. So that happened, and that's been a big deal in the news recently.
Mm-hmm.
I will say my Thanksgiving was interesting. There was
how interesting was it? Okay, there you go.
Well, I mean, I had like this really massive mug, and I filled it like maybe 4 times with rum and Coke.
Ooh,
half rum, half Coke.
Can you clarify? Was it a Reese's mug?
A Reese's mug? What?
Like RG Pie?
I have no idea what that means, but it was a gigantic mug. It was probably about a liter size of a mug. So I probably had like maybe 4 to 6 liters of rum and Coke that one night.
How are you still here?
Yeah, I mean, there was this time. I was at my sister's, and we were having a really nice Thanksgiving dinner, and nothing went wrong there. It was when I got home, I decided to get on Discord and on Discord Voice, and I apparently entertained people for over 4 hours with my rantings and ravings, and I want to try and be as fully disclosured as I can be, and be as honest about myself as possible. I was fucking wasted. But I mean, I think I nearly cried like 5 times during the entire the whole rant and everything. And yeah, it was something else. By the way, there I believe there was audio that was recorded of it. And I don't know. I'm contemplating whether I want to like have that, like, maybe we'll give that out at some point, like during like the show itself here, and we'll make some of it at least part of the show eventually. maybe for like a nice little enticing thing to become a Patreon supporter or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. That'd be kind of a good idea. I don't know.
Yeah, because you don't want that kind of stuff to leak. So you might as well just put it out there.
Exactly. I mean, I am fully aware of my ridiculousness at times, and I was relatively aware of my insanity that night at this point. So, I mean, I haven't listened to it myself because I kind of haven't wanted to, but that's okay. But anyway, we should probably get to our topic for the night. What did you do actually, instead of like jumping right to that?
Well, it's kind of you for asking.
Sorry, just No,
it's okay.
Stole all the thunder in the room.
So a myriad of things happened. So my cat was dying during Thanksgiving.
Jesus.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So,
and I was getting drunk. Wow.
Full disclosure. He is.
Oh
we
my
have
God.
more in about. Yeah.
I pressed the wrong
totally
channel and silenced you for a second there. I meant to silence myself.
Oh, but geez, I mean, you could have just told me.
So repeat what you were about to say. I'm sorry.
Silencia. So yeah, my cat's doing well now. Have him on the right antibiotic. In and out of the vet. But we finally think that he'll be out for good. We got him on a good regimen here. But aside from that, I guess holiday was good. Had 3 Thanksgivings.
Jeez.
I know. I seriously,
How could you fill it all? Oh my God, that's way too much.
I forced it. I forced it down. It was it should have been like, I feel like there should have been a pay-per-view for that. Like people could have.
Maybe you should have recorded it, and then like we could have put that on the Patreon at some point too. Like, hey, you can watch Jordan stuff himself for 3 hours.
Well, I just put all my food in a blender and just sip it. So yeah, it was a very interesting holiday weekend.
Yeah. And, my family, we moved. I think I mentioned this, the week before, Thanksgiving. I put out like a 6-minute or something less than that, I think, little, snippet of like what is happening, why we're not going to be around for a few, weeks. And I told them that I was going to be moving that week. And yeah, I was moving literally the day before Thanksgiving and the day after and the entire week after, and I just actually got back to work today, and yeah, it's been a little rough, but moving on Thanksgiving, we actually got our turkey, or I don't know if we had turkey or if it was chicken. I don't remember at this point, because we actually got it from Popeyes, from what I remember, actually, honestly. But so, I mean, we were living it up. It was actually fucking delicious, though. I will say that much. It was delicious.
They put that stank on it.
Yeah, I mean, Popeyes does good. Popeyes does good. I'm gonna say. I like Popeyes. But anyway. So our topic this week, though, was gonna be, capitalism versus socialism versus mixed economy, and I'm hoping we're going to do a good enough job on it, but I don't honestly know either. I really didn't find a whole lot of time in the last 2 weeks to research this a lot. I've watched a few videos online from a few different sources, and I've read a very small amount. I haven't really done a whole huge amount of research on this, unfortunately, but I do have a clip that we can start out the day here with. It's about about 2 minutes long, this video, and it's from, I believe, this was from an organization on YouTube. Where the hell is my mouse? Oh my god, I can't find it. Oh, there it is. It was, I think it's Test Tube News or something like that, and they were pretty good. I liked their video, and so I pulled a clip of the one video, and Lizette Padilla from their organization, who also has co-hosted on The Young Turks before, which is another news network on YouTube.
Our competitor.
I mean, I don't know if I would call her a competitor. I don't think we're doing anything like what they're doing.
No.
I don't think we can compete with them too. They just got like $20 million, and we have like $5 a month right now, dude. So,
but over time, that $5 monthly will accumulate into millions.
Build up eventually, big league. But this is Lizette. She is going to try and explain a little bit of capitalism and the history behind it. I found this really, really interesting.
What exactly is capitalism? Simply put, capitalism is a social and economic system where both the means of production and any associated trade are privately owned. This isn't the end-all be-all definition of capitalism, but it does illustrate its tenets as opposed to other systems like socialism, communism, fascism, and a bunch of other isms. Generally, societies tend to be mixtures of different systems, and pretty much every country is a mixture. So why is capitalism so pervasive? Well, capitalism grew directly out of failed middle-age feudalism. Think of feudalism as a lot of tiny dictatorships. The lords would own land and set the rules. Serfs would live on that land and work the farms in exchange for protection by the lord. But since each system was self-contained, neither the lords nor the serfs had any incentive to work harder than they had to. A serf could never surpass a lord, and everyone was essentially set for life. In short, feudalism meant that there was no financial competition, and without competition, there was no reason to innovate technology or improve their society. So when the serfs finally had enough of being self-sufficient slaves and revolted, it left a new class of farmers competing with each other to sell the crops they had previously exchanged for land and protection. This was the birth of modern-day capitalist markets, and the quote, almighty dollar, which allowed serfs to become lords themselves if they were competitive enough in the marketplace. In turn, lords would pay their workers instead of offering housing and protection, transforming a collective into a system of individual self-responsibility. After entering the socio-economic system, capitalism spread like wildfire and became a part of nearly every country's policymaking process. Even materially poor third world countries, unable to establish free markets or private ownership, strive for capitalist policy.
So that was her definition of capitalism, and a bit of a history lesson on where capitalism originated from, which I found super fascinating. I mean, I knew that feudalism was before capitalism, but I kind of didn't understand the concept of how they connected to each other. Mm-hmm. But like with that definition, it's really right there where you can even see very clearly the similarities between feudalism and modern day, where you have the boss in a certain job and a certain place or certain corporation or business, small business, whatever it is, and they are essentially the new lord. And then the workers in that company become the serfs, basically. And the difference also does become you can eventually work your way up to become the boss eventually as well in a lot of this capitalist society. Whereas obviously if you were a peasant or a serf or whatever you wanted to call yourself back then, there was pretty much zero possibility of that ever happening. You were a serf, and you were going to be a serf for the rest of your life. Your children were going to be serfs. Their children were going to be serfs. Their children were going to be serfs, and so on. And so, like she said, with that, when they went and revolted the peasants, they eventually came across a new way of doing things where the farmers themselves started having to compete with each other. And that sort of spurred our modern day capitalism.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's very revealing.
Yeah.
I guess it just, and like you said, like the similarities, it just comes down to there being someone in charge and someone working for the person that's in charge. It's like, it's that delineation.
Absolutely.
And yeah. So, and something to also mention is that pretty much all of society around the world is based on a capitalistic framework. And
at least 90% of it, at least, there are some pockets, I think, in the world where there's still people that are not even connected with the capitalist markets and everything, but that's shrinking. And
right.
There's probably very serious reasons why that's happening. And it's not always because capitalism is great. It's partly due to, there's things like the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank and everything. And some things that they do seem good, but then there's other things also that's not,
a little fuzzy.
Questionable. But I guess that's another topic for another time. But
right. But you know what? I think that's what they're going through is the eternal struggle of a capitalist, which is basically, which is between profit, the motive for profit, and also the motive for, to appease the consumer. So it's always that tug of war where sometimes, they're in the same, they're together, but for the most part, they seem to be in a game of tug of war where, in order to maximize profits, they would have to do some cutting of some kind, whether that be in terms of product quality or if that be in a workforce, within that, such company.
Yeah, and usually that's where it happens. And especially these days. Like, this is what a lot of people call class struggle. And this is the tug of war between the bosses and the business owners and the worker class. And I'll probably link a few different videos, but one of them, I can't remember which one now because I watched so many. I think it might have been a Crash Course video that,
oh, they're great.
No, I love Crash Course. They're really, really good on these issues.
Definitely.
On everything, really. But getting back to my point, what was my point? Wow.
Thanks, Crash Course.
Oh my God. Damn it, Jordan, you've ruined me. It's all Jordan's fault. But
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. What was it? What was I saying? Can you?
It had to do with capitalism.
That really helps. No, but like it's the class struggle. The thing that they were talking about was that the class struggle is that the worker class wants to get paid as much as they possibly can for their service or for their work. Mm-hmm. And the owner class or the bosses want to, make as much profit for themselves as they possibly can. And so obviously you have this tug of war between the workers and the bosses because the bosses want to make a lot of money for themselves, but the workers also want to make a lot of money for themselves as well. And so there's always going to be a push and pull between the two, and it's just it's never ending. It's just never going to end.
Capitalism is predicated on winners and losers.
Unfortunately,
yeah. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, there's just reading and learning so much more about the differences between capitalism, socialism, even sometimes communism. You start to realize that unfortunately, within a single country or region, both both a form of society can't proliferate while the other one is also working in that same region. Like it's so like what we have now, like what we have today is a capitalistic society, a capitalistic framework with social some social reforms thrown in, and independent. And that's almost like the world. Even if you think about the most extreme of countries. So, for instance, ones that we even label communist, like China, North Korea, or Cuba, for instance, they aren't even wholly communist because they have capitalistic the implementations within their government and society.
Yeah, from what I remember hearing on on a TED talk that a lady was giving on capitalism, was she described China as having a sort of state capitalism where China was trying to make a profit, and she defines capitalism basically as a market based on profit. You know, you start a business to try and make profit, whereas another form, like maybe socialism, is more towards doing good for people, potentially. You know, and so that was the difference between the two for her, at least.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it really comes down to who owns the means to production.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the ruling class, then that's about 1% of the total population of any given country. But if you put it in the hands of the working class, then of course it's distributed much more widely, which means more people benefit from just the I guess their work.
Yeah.
And I think, and here's where like things get a little shaky. Oh yeah, by the way, in researching into this topic, it's also, on top of what I said prior, it just, it makes it, I can't even, unfortunately, I can't fathom a society that actually is based on, wholly based on either one of these different philosophies. So like, I can't, America in its foundation, it was very, capitalistic, in its inception. So, individual liberty,
there's always been a mix of capitalism and a little bit of socialism as well. There's always been. And
right. Yeah. And yeah, totally. Because even in the, even in its founding, there's really hard stances on certain, I guess certain rights, which is social in nature, because essentially in capitalism, it's almost like a free range, like, in other words, a free market, is another name for capitalism. And, and it's weird because within the definition of capitalism, it's almost as if they want to have their cake and eat it too, which is basically they're promoting equality among people, but also, basing their society on how well, capitalists, do. And also,
like you said earlier, there's always got to be winners and losers, right?
Exactly.
In capitalism.
Totally, except in a way, but within the DNA of capitalism, like the definition itself, it makes it seem as though there can be equality in capitalism, which unfortunately isn't true. It breeds inequality.
Yeah.
Just, because everyone can't be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. There needs to be people who contribute to those companies in a privatized system of,
not everyone can be
economics.
the boss, right? So there has to be bosses, there has to be workers, and so there's never going to be a completely equal society. Now, obviously, communism is the other extreme where there are no bosses and everyone is completely equal, and that also doesn't really work. Now, does it? I mean, like, we do need to have bosses in some regards, because you do need to have someone with some expertise that can actually make informed decisions, and that's helpful, and it helps to delegate work to each other as well, and all that. But, like, obviously, I feel, and I think you're gonna be very much the same with me, like, there has to be a mixture of capitalism and socialism in a lot of regards. You know, you cannot have an extreme on one side or the other. A completely free market is not good in a lot of ways, and a completely controlled market is not good either.
Right. And what we have today is is capitalism mitigated by social reform.
Yeah.
So basically, even like what we're dealing with now, and I spoke to you earlier about this net neutrality, which is social in nature, because it's
we're trying to keep everyone like very like equal on the atmosphere of the internet, instead of making the internet, you know, like whoever controls the pipelines can control what you can see and do, you know.
Exactly. But that piece of legislation is sort of, it's almost like it's vouching for the people, because essentially that's what people want. I mean, say if people wanted something different and they vouched for that, then that would have been social as well. But the fact that everyone has a collective voice and are telling their representatives, this is what we want, and they make reforms in order to reflect what the people want, that's social. That's socialism.
And it's not even like that issue in itself is also it's not left versus right either. There are people on the right and there are people on the left that are, you know, against regulating and controlling the internet. The free market helps everyone, you know, talk online without hurdles and without having to pay out the ass to try and get access to viewers and listeners. You know, that's across the board for both sides. So, you know, that is not a partisan issue, the you know, net neutrality. That is very much an everyone issue on both sides.
Yeah, totally. And you know what I found really interesting is how gender, racial, and sexuality neutral socialism is, because it really groups people into working people, and how people can identify as that and use that in order to collectively improve society or improve their living conditions. And I thought I just thought that was really interesting, and I find it very compelling, and very compelling to normal everyday people if they can see themselves not necessarily based on the region they were born in, or based on the color of their skin, or the culture that they're a part of. Yeah. But as working people, that's the one thing that everyone has in common around the whole world. And I think that's what makes the socialism message so strong. But, so yeah, even thinking about, Dr. Martin Luther King, but, you know, like we spoke about this before, he was assassinated assembling the Poor People March. And which essentially is a march for the working class. And, and so
I believe there were socialist groups at the time that he was, you know, partnered with as well. Like there was an American Socialist Party back then, and I believe it still probably exists today. And that was, if you ever have a union strike or something like that, usually you'll find the American Socialist Party and those people there, because that's very much their wheelhouse. That is, unions in themselves is to try and equalize the balance between the worker and the bosses, right?
Right.
So this is why a lot of the American socialists and even American communists, because there are some out there that advocate for communism itself, But those groups usually tend to try and work very closely with unions, and especially when unions need support for some protests and some fight that they're trying to have with their bosses, because, well, it's a very socialist thing to try and equalize the power between the bosses and the workers. And there are so many different issues, though, that are what I would consider socialistic issues that are actually very, very good things, just like labor unions are, like universal health care and universalizing education. I think that people of any age should be able to go to university for free. Personally, I wish we had a society where anyone can go and get an education if they were driven enough to do it. And we can do that. Other countries do that, especially the Scandinavian countries. They are all over that. Like Sweden has a lot of programs, and Sweden will even give anyone that's enrolled in college, I believe is what it is. If you're enrolled in college, they'll even give you a basic income as well while you're a student. And so you can focus on your studies and then get through your degree or whatever you're working for, and then become an actual productive member of society if you want, and that's, to me, that sounds like a great thing. And we can have that here. It's just there's so many other things that we need to also change as well. And it's also with universal health care, it's going to be expensive, definitely, for the tax code. But there are so many ways where we keep on cutting taxes to the top 1% that it's just maddening to me. And today, even, like, I was reading stuff about the newest iteration of tax reform that the Trump administration has been pushing, that will absolutely decimate the middle class and the lower classes, and especially students. Part of the bill, I believe, because there's a thing right now for students. If you are a student and you have student loans, you can actually take your student loan payments and put that towards your taxes. So, like, if you pay, let's say, like, I don't know, like $20,000 in student loans that year, you can actually put that towards your taxes, and it lowers your taxes in some way. And so that is something that they're actually going to get rid of in the tax bill that's going on right now. You're not going to be able to claim your student loan payments in any way, and you're not going to be able to make any benefit from it anymore. So if you're right out of college, which is going to be the people that are going to have those, those bills or those, the student loan payments, you're going to be really screwed. And another thing that they have in there is they're getting rid of the estate tax, from what I remember hearing as well. And the estate tax only affects the top 1%. It's the estate tax is only wealth in an inheritance that's over a few $1 million, I believe. It might be $1 million, it might be a few million. I can't entirely remember where it is, but if your family doesn't have an estate over, let's just give it the 1 million. If your estate doesn't have over $1 million, you will never pay a dime towards the estate tax. So your family will never be touched by it. So this is really only a tax on the wealthiest families that they're going to get rid of. Who does that affect the most? Shockingly, the rich. Right. And one person that definitely stands to gain a lot from that is Donald Trump's children.
Totally.
They're going to make millions and millions of dollars off of that.
Oh, absolutely. And also what this tax bill is doing is it's going to just completely cut the last vestiges of social of the social programs we have in the U.S. So Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, it's going to gut their yearly allowances.
Yeah.
And so that's just pretty much the United States supplanting its feet into capitalism.
Yeah.
And but I think where my heels kind of start digging, or it doesn't dig, it just kind of, I'm running towards this middle ground between socialism and capitalism. And then I stop at my heels because the quality of these social programs is predicated on capitalism. If there's a boom in the economy, which is based on corporations and businesses, then these social programs will be well fed. They'll be bold and they'll be fully thought out. But in a time of recession, these social programs are the first things to get cut, and it creates lower confidence in these programs among the populace, which essentially gets people to turn towards more privatized care or programs, and essentially eviscerates those social programs once again. So it's this we're in this place now because we all know that recession is a necessary evil in a capitalistic society. It's something you just can't avoid. Well, with every boom, there's a bust. That's just the way it goes.
I mean, we did have, I believe it's 50 years where we didn't have any major recessions. And the only reason why we had, a massive recession recently was especially attributable to the President Bill Clinton's deregulation of this little thing called Glass-Steagall that we've talked about before, which was Glass-Steagall put firewalls between the different financial industries. The banking industry, where you put your money into a bank and they hold it for you, and then you can take it out whenever you want. And the investment industry, where that's Wall Street, and where you're speculating on different companies, you put money in, and you hopefully get money out if the company does good. And then there was also the insurance market as well. So insurance markets obviously are, you put a bunch of money in there, and if something goes wrong somewhere, you pay for their issues with the money in the insurance market, right? So everyone in the insurance market pays into it, like car insurance. If you have a car, you have to pay car insurance. And what you're doing is you're putting money into the system, and whenever someone has a claim to be paid for their car to be repaired after an accident or something like that, that money comes from the insurance market pool. And so the problem became when you deregulate that, now all these different markets can sort of coalesce together. And so big ass banks like Bank of America can then buy, I believe Merrill Lynch was a company that Bank of America bought, which was a investment agency, I believe. And so what happened then was these banks get all this depositor money, and then they use that depositor money for speculation on Wall Street. And obviously you can see the problem there. If the market, if Wall Street goes bottoms up, which was what happened in 2008, what happens then is now the banks don't have the money to lend out to the people that actually put their money into the bank, entrusting it to them. And so this is exactly the same kind of thing that happened during the Great Depression. Back then, these markets were also connected together again. And what happened was the Wall Street and the stock market exchange crashed severely millions and millions of people lost everything because of this crash. And because the depositors in those banks, they entrusted their money to the bank, and then that money that they entrusted to the bank was then used on Wall Street, and then they lost it all on Wall Street. And so, then they didn't have money to give out to people, and people were afraid to lose their money, so everyone rushed to the banks to get their money out as quickly as possible, and the banks went bankrupt. And they didn't have any money to give anyone. And then it just spiraled out from there. And that's essentially how it works, unfortunately, with these systems being controlled together. And this is why Glass-Steagall was important, because it actually put that firewall there and made sure that if the stock market crashed, it would only stay to the stock market. It wouldn't bleed into the depositor banks. It wouldn't bleed into the the insurance market, and things would keep rolling, And if you put all of your eggs in one basket, if your one basket gets blown up, you're not holding any more eggs anymore. And so it's just a recipe for disaster.
Right. And I think that's targeting a very specific form of recession or cause of recession. There's also many other potential causes to a failing economy as well. And I think one big example of that is the Great Depression, which everything I've read, everything that I've seen, they've always struggled to find the exact reason for it happening. And I guess I'm stuck in this place where I'm feeling as if we're always the struggle between the ruling class and the working class will always be an area of contention, because no one's ever going to be wholly satisfied with what they have.
Yeah. Even the rich will never be satisfied with as much as they've had,
Exactly. I mean, I think everyone knows by this point, or pretty much aware of the greed, that they're associated with. But, I guess we spoke a little about capitalism, but I think socialism needs its day in court. And
I guess.
And of course, the purveyor of socialism, is the great Karl Marx, of course, and he of course he's contributed as one of the forefathers of the idea of socialism and also communism. And of course that in reading a lot, I realized how specific the feeling of the damnation of communism is to the United States. I kept reading how the U.S. has a very distrustful way towards communism and socialism as well.
Yeah.
And just I don't know. I'm realizing how I'm stuck right now, and I implore everyone who's listening to also do your research and homework and just try to figure out what side of the fence you stand on, because like I said, it's very difficult, and we're trying to do it now all over the world, but we see that even in the most advanced of societies, like Sweden, for instance, they're also struggling with their capitalistic society with social implementation. And because there's been recent cuts. There's been cuts for over 2 decades in their social programs because of the capitalistic framework that they do have. These people are always going to ask for more. And it's man, I don't know. I don't know. I've never been so confused on a concept before, or the implementation of a concept.
I mean, I think I mentioned earlier that I think both of us, overall, I think where we both sit is about the same, where we want a sort of mix between the two. So, like, we've talked about capitalism. Capitalism is basically, business for profit. Like, the whole entire reason for capitalism is profit. It's all profit driven. And with socialism, it's more geared towards equality and giving everyone what they need to survive. That's my read on it, at least. And you could disagree with me, but that's what I see it as, at least for me, is the difference. But like, I get it where just giving people just what they need and nothing more also doesn't sound appealing either in a lot of ways, because human nature, and even like I was talking to Jordan before the show here, like even in animal nature, I don't think like just having just what you need is what any creature would ever accept. Like every creature out there is always striving to get more for themselves, and there's to a point, like I gave the example earlier of, like, let's say you're a lion or some kind of a giant cat or something. You kill something for food, and it's more than you need to survive off of. But what if, like, in a few days when you couldn't catch another thing to eat, it's probably a good thing that you now have a little bit extra left over, right? Or that you ate more than your fill last time, So, like, I can see reasons why having more than just, subsisting on what you need can be useful in nature, as well as human nature, which, like, we enjoy, having more than we need. Obviously, we don't need computers. We don't need phones. We don't need all of these devices that we have. But we really, really enjoy and love these things being around, So, right. Like, as humans, we cannot just have just what we need. And when we only go that far, that's when, life is not as fulfilling for some people.
Right. And, I mean, communism. Well, okay, so socialism is essentially the interim to communism. And according to Frederick Engels.
And Karl Marx.
Who worked alongside Karl Marx.
Yeah.
And what we have now is basically a politician, including Bernie, who we love, is essentially they're asking to reform capitalism, not necessarily replace it.
Yeah.
And what I'm just trying to get to is that what that's going to cause is just more unrest and strife, essentially, because no way is ever going to have is never going to be satisfied. And I think that's really important what you said, which is none of us need these, none of us need iPhones, none of us need Android devices or computers and, Amazon Kindles, but we want them. Because we believe that they add value to our lives. They're like creature comforts, and
yeah.
And in what my main contention towards, because I believe I'm quote unquote democratic socialist, which is also a very difficult difficult term to really define, because you'll find some wings saying, well, it's the implementation of socialism within capitalism. And then other people would say, no, that's just democratic socialism is essentially socialism. People are still kind of confused on that matter. But
yeah.
But my main, I guess, point of contention is, will socialism implemented holistically in a society impede on innovation, because innovation, at least from what, in terms of from my own creativity and from what I know of reading about others, is that it's contingent on competition, because you're essentially trying to make things better, and specifically product. So, and I guess I have a lot of questions, and unfortunately, I don't necessarily have any answers. And Karl Marx actually has a really good quote. Basically, in the gist is, philosophers do a lot of oh god damn it, do a lot of thinking about changing or reforming the world. Except now it's time to actually do it. And except right now, I feel like we don't necessarily even know how to get past the philosophical stage of thinking about this intermixing types of societies.
Yeah.
So, oh man. Guys, and honestly, I'm at the point now where I'm reading more into this, and I think this will be something that will pester me for the rest of my life, because I'm starting to find this even more important than political, and more important than political party, because I feel like your stance on types of society will basically determine what side of the political spectrum you stand on in terms of party affiliation.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what people should define themselves. And it's in fact the most difficult question to answer, because I think Democrat and Republican, they're very fluid. They're always changing. Neoliberalism, and there's always the goalposts are always moved in any which direction, which makes people comfortable, because that means that they can always, because we're creatures of change, and we're very fluid, but really challenge yourself to learn about this stuff and to ask yourself which side of the fence you stand on, because I'm still trying to ask myself those important questions, and I still don't have any answer to them.
Yeah, that's reasonable, and it's difficult to say like one is better than the other. Obviously, I personally, I think both extremes are bad. Left or between capitalism and pure socialism, both of those options do not work for me. I think that we need a mixture of the two. And
you find they both fail.
Oh my god!
In every example. Yeah, hey Chris.
Oh hey Michael. Oh,
hey.
I mean, oh hi. We totally didn't talk some smack on you earlier, by the way.
I expect it.
Don't listen to the intro. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, don't go back. Don't go back.
Hey Michael, how has things been going in your neck of the woods, by the way?
I am sick as fuck.
Ooh, I hear it.
Yeah. Well,
for the audience's benefit, I've just been really sick for the last week, so I've been sleeping a lot and slept a little too much.
You missed our recapping of our last week and Thanksgiving. Even my Thanksgiving was fun and interesting and exciting.
I have a funny joke. Hey Mike, how was your Thanksgiving? Just joking.
Thanksgiving. Happy fuck off Traitors Day.
We were talking a little bit about capitalism versus socialism and communism. We even played a clip earlier about capitalism and like the historic backdrop of it, which was feudalism, where it came from feudalism, and after peasants revolted, I can't remember what the century it was. Might have been like the 13th century or something. I don't remember.
Something like that.
Something like that. But like the peasants revolted and were like, yeah, we're not doing this feudalism bullshit anymore because we have no actual ability to go anywhere in life other than be serfs for the rest of eternity. And fuck this. And so out of that became these farmers then had to start competing with each other for money. Yeah. And that was the basis of capitalism. And today, I see the similarities between our system now and feudalism, where we have bosses of companies which are now sort of the new lords, you know?
Yeah, with social mobility being an all-time low, you get people who are stuck being essentially serfs.
Yeah. And we've outsourced a lot of that, especially to other countries at this point. And this is the thing about imperialism. That's the whole reason why every country in Europe was trying to become an empire, where they had different colonies around the earth, because then they can sort of like outsource all of their cheap, poor labor to another country, and just make money off of it. You know, and obviously the slave trade and everything came out of that and all that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, anyway.
What if the cheap, poor labor wasn't foreign?
Yeah.
Just bring them here and enslave them.
Yeah.
Why not?
That's one way that works too, you know. And today we just sort of have like severe differences between the rich and the poor in the same country, and, you know, just... It's very stark. It's in your face, and this is why people today see it and are just angry and hateful of the system that we have. But you know, where do we go from here? Though is the question of the day.
So to take that back to what I think you were talking about before I joined you, a lot of people take that and say, right, well, capitalism's terrible. It's failed completely. We have to go to socialism, pure 100% socialism. And I'd say that's like also not a great idea.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah. Like, and I'm interested to know why, because like throughout this conversation, Chris and I realized that neither of us, or neither Ayn Rand nor Karl Marx, we're somewhere in the middle in terms of wanting to have a capitalistic and social society at the same time. Except, is it even possible to have that? Because each side, the working class and the ruling class, are always going to want more. And that's kind of the gridlock that we have now across the world.
It's the class struggle. It's always going to be there, unfortunately.
Yeah, you always want to... One side always... one group of people will always fuck it up.
Yeah.
Just historically, every time you have a functioning society, someone fucks it up.
Yeah. Inevitably, it's human nature, unfortunately. And I was explaining the class struggle earlier to Jordan with, like, you know, the working class always wants to make more money for themselves so that they can have more. And obviously maybe not the owning class, but like the bosses and the ruling class always wants more for themselves. So it's always going to be that struggle between the working class wanting more for themselves and the ruling class and the upper class wanting more for themselves. So that it's always going to be, both sides are going to be at contentions with each other, no matter what we do, unfortunately. But the best we can possibly do, I think, is to try and equalize things as much as possible, you know? And there are ways of doing that, and I think we're going to have a episode on itself on the progressive taxation systems, and I think that is a very, very large part of the puzzle.
You're probably right there.
And
one thing I was looking at was, in a capitalism, money tends to float upwards. You end up with a bunch of people at the top of the food chain who have lots of money and increasing amounts of money. That should sound familiar.
No, it doesn't sound familiar at all.
Socialism, you end up just running out of stuff. I don't know what it is about socialists, but they tend to... Socialists, every time it's been tried, it's just inefficient.
Yeah.
It's where people end up getting the idea that all government programs are inefficient when they're actually not. But when you control everything, essentially, it becomes somewhat inefficient.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Sorry.
So both systems are unsustainable. What you need is a system where capitalism is great because it generates quite a lot of wealth, but like I say, I'll go straight to the top. What you need is some kind of system in there to bring that wealth back down to the bottom. And that would be a strong taxation system.
A mixed economy?
A mixed economy. It's where you tax people and then use that money to pay, essentially, to inject that back into the bottom of the economy. So you keep things flowing.
That, and like also, there has to be reasonable regulation as well, so that the companies aren't screwing over the rest of the economy and the people, and that, also the people aren't like ruining the system in other ways as well. Like there's always a push and pull, like we said. We need to find the common ground, and that can be done through government intervention with a progressive taxation system and reasonable regulations on the market and on behaviors.
Yeah, but here's where I don't know who has the power in terms of bargaining for reform and in the government's ear, because our social programs are paid by capitalism. It's paid by capital, and with a society built like that, who truly has the ear of the politicians? Who truly has the power in that kind of situation? Because the philosophy of capitalism is less regulation, because essentially they believe that will increase competition. But, of course, the philosophy for socialism is, of collective bargaining and an owning of development. So, and also I don't know. I told Chris before Mike that I've never been so confused on the topic before in terms of how to best satisfy the needs of everyone. And once again, that plays into the part of capitalism, which is there has to be clear winners and a clear loser. I don't know, guys.
Yeah.
Well, humanity's been trying to figure it out for the last, 50,000 years now, and we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Right.
It's taken us a little bit of time. I mean, I think ultimately what really needs to be the case is the needs of the many needs to necessarily outweigh the needs of the few, and that's obviously a very famous quote. I don't remember where it's from, probably like Star Trek or something, but it is true though. Like the needs of the many should always outweigh the needs of the few. Like we cannot have a few people getting everything and everyone else is at the expense of it. Like the need of everyone needs to be, accounted for. Everyone needs to be a part of the bargaining. It cannot be a small few people, which is kind of what we have today in America. And there's a lot of people, even a famous guy by the name of Noam Chomsky does not say that we have a democracy. We have a plutocracy, which means that the wealthiest class basically controls the government, and that kind of system is where we're at right now, and that's not sustainable, because the wealthy are going to do everything that they want for themselves while at the expense of the rest of us, and that's always going to eventually lead to serious conflict between the working class and the upper class. It's always going to, because like we're seeing today, especially like we even mentioned Trump's recent tax plan. Oh my God. Apparently,
Christ.
yeah, this new tax plan is basically a tax cut for the wealthiest and a tax hike or raising the taxes for the rest of us, especially those that are going to college or that are just recently out of college that have college debt. We are going to be the ones that are going to be screwed over the most with this tax plan, and the wealthiest are going to be the beneficiaries of it. And that just cannot be sustainable, because at a point people have to eventually get pissed off enough to say, enough is enough. We need to stop this bullshit, and we need to stop it now. And I hope that happens sometime soon with the American people, but it's amazing what the American people can put up with, is all I'm going to say.
I think it's more than put up with. I think a lot of people, just from what I've observed, especially with Trump, a lot of people see it happening and then are convinced that it's a good thing.
Yeah. I guess those are probably like Trump supporters, right?
He removed environmental regulations. I'm like, yeah, but you guys are the ones that are getting screwed by that.
Yeah. Yeah, for some reason, like, it's been pounded into a lot of people's heads in America by the right wing and places like Fox News, where that government is always the problem. Like, going back to Ronald Reagan, like, one of his famous lines is something to the lines of, like, blah, blah, blah is not the problem. Government is the problem. It's something like that, where, like, they keep saying that government is the problem. They've been saying this for decades upon decades, that government is your problem. It's not like capitalism is not the problem. It's government is the problem. No, it's not. I mean, it can be. It can be in some instances if, like, the government gets taken over by wealthy interests, like what we have today. But overall, the government
itself... The government itself isn't a problem. It's how the current government is the problem. Yeah, and to extend that, having no government would be a bit of a problem. Yeah. In fact, one of the problems is oftentimes we don't have enough government to run things properly.
Yeah. And in one of the videos that I'm going to link with this show, this TED Talk that I talked about earlier that you weren't here for, this lady actually had a quote in there where she was saying, it's not capitalism's fault, like, that, the economy gets fucked up, essentially. That's sort of like saying, like, it's gravity's fault for a plane crash. Like, gravity's always there, but it's not necessarily gravity's fault for the crash itself, And it's sort of the same with democracy and government. Government is there. It's not that necessarily the plane crashed because of government being there. Government's always there. So there's something else that went wrong. It was at least an interesting argument, what she had, and I'm sort of, like, lumping that onto government too now, And, like, pure capitalism, if you let it go to an extreme, it will go to a really dark, bad place, and we've seen that during the Great Depression was the biggest moment where we saw a very dark side of capitalism, and we're seeing it today again, and shockingly, things are much more unequal today than they were during the Great Depression, and our major corporations are so vastly larger than they were back then as well. And this is the fear, as, like, if the market has a severely catastrophic crash like that of, the 1930s, during the Great Depression, again, we don't know the depths of what that can be for us. And this is why most reasonable people, even, like, especially, like, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, want to break up these big institutions and reinstate antitrust laws like Glass-Steagall to try and to take a lot more of that risk out, because if that risk is there, then that means that we can potentially have something as bad as the Great Depression And if our nature in economy is any indication of where it's going to go, back before Glass-Steagall, the economy used to boom and bust every 20 years or something like that. You know, it was a regular cycle where there would be booms and busts until there was the major one that just really effed everything up. And then after Glass-Steagall, there was at least 50 years of relatively stable economy. And so, you know, that's where we are today, though, is after they've repealed Glass-Steagall and the economy crashed less than 10 years later, you know? So it stands to reason, right? Are you guys still there? Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'm listening intently.
I always thought the idea that the banks would regulate themselves is like, say if a shop just opened the door, left, and says, look, I trust everyone not to take anything. And you walk in and you go, no, I think I will. if people can get away with it, they do things.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what the banks are doing.
Yeah. Like, when I was a kid, you know, there was a time where I worked at Target, and, you know, I took a couple things from there when I was working overnight, you know? I mean, if you have the opportunity, some people will just take it, you know? Like, it's not right sometimes. Obviously, it can be against the law at times, but, we do stupid things as humans, you know? It's human nature, unfortunately, you know? But...
It's true.
You know, whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're all on a consensus, though, with this. Like, we've said a couple times here. I think we all agree that we kind of need a mixed economy. Not quite full-on socialism, not quite full-on capitalism, because a free market in itself is unsustainable, because then it's purely driven on profits, and that can go to dark places.
Right. And I think one thing that, in order to truly have a mixed economy, people are going to unfortunately have to get comfortable with the idea of inflation, and which is a main contributor to recession. And as crazy and bad as that sounds, we have to be comfortable with the idea that businesses and corporations are going to want to expand. And of course that if there's no market activity, if there's no economic activity, if it's stagnant or if it goes down, that is what causes essentially recession in its most basic form. And so that puts a lot of earnest on how well these businesses and corporations do, because essentially that pays for the socialized programs that we're asking for. So we just had to be comfortable with the idea that there's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys in this mixed economy that we're asking for. And that's just being realistic.
Yeah.
And,
but it's mixed peaks and valleys in every system. I don't think you can ever iron it out.
Yeah. And even with Glass-Steagall and stuff, that was mostly just to mitigate the extent of those crashes and stuff. You know, there were different cycles in that 50 years where there were no major, you know, crashes like that, but there were dips and booms in there as well. So, I mean, but the thing was, with proper government regulation, you can secure things in a better way, where things aren't going to go and just go crazy when, like we were saying, you know, if the Wall Street stock exchange just explodes on itself, all right, that's okay, because the banking industry is still not touched, the insurance markets are still not touched, the real estate markets are not touched. It was just solely on that one industry. They're the guys that lost the money, and everything else is still going to be able to pick up the tab and keep going forward. Whereas if you put all of the eggs in one basket, then things get really, really bad when things go bad. You know? Things get really, really bad. But,
You're here.
I mean, with that, guys, I mean, we're about on time at this point. I think we're going to have another show on this eventually, too, because this is a really big topic. I don't think we adequately touched on everything. We touched mostly on capitalism and our personal opinions on a mixed economy and a little bit about socialism and everything. But I think there's probably still more, so we're probably eventually going to have another episode on this in the future, because this is important, guys. I mean, this is... We need to figure out where we need to be in the future and how to structure an economy. You know, and this is just us three guys here, you know? This is something like you guys
random dickheads on the internet are going to solve the world.
What's that?
3 random dickheads on the internet are going to solve the world.
Pretty much. But, like, this is something, like we've been saying, economists have been working on this issue for centuries. You know, like, people have been trying to figure this out for centuries, and there have been no perfect answers, and I doubt we'll even be able to come to a perfect answer, but it's still a really, really interesting topic, and it's one of the most important topics of our time, too. You know, with how things have been going and everything. But with that, guys, man, I've been having a rough time right now. I had my 1 day back at work. Oh, it was so rough. Man, so much work.
Needed a nice hard drink.
Yeah, I have some rum and coke. But you know, I mean, I will say though, like I did mention it earlier. I had that little little inebriation on Thanksgiving Day. And there might actually be audio out there involved with what was said that day. And I don't know. I'm thinking it'll eventually be like I'll probably release some of it at some point. Like I apparently went on for like 4 hours straight, you know, drunk and just like spilling my heart out about like politics and my passion and all that. And I think I nearly cried like 5 times at least. It was pretty amazing.
I told Chris he has to release it because before the Russians hold it as collateral.
Oh wow, yeah, that's actually true. Oh man,
yeah, before the Russians hack it.
But yeah, that could be a nice
Chris
little.
If Chris is about next week and he's like, okay, guys, the Russians are great.
By the
He's
way,
got the national anthem.
I'm totally not a Putin bot, but while we're on it,
No.
Russia's really great, isn't it?
It's such a great place. What are you talking about? Where is it?
Trump is strong.
Stall.
It's such a great land of majesty and all I'm trying to say is Vladimir Putin, kind of a great guy. You know what I mean? He rides horses shirtless, and he's a cool guy. He wrestles bears by himself. You know, that's what he does on a daily basis, guys. Okay, I'm done with that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think I will probably release it as maybe even like a Patreon thing eventually. You know, if you guys want to donate to our Patreon and help the show out, maybe I'll release that audio. I think what we have is like an hour and something of me being drunk as hell and passionate about politics for my own I if nothing else you can say from it, I am very passionate about what I believe in politics. But yeah, you can donate to us on patreon.com/theevolutionofnow. You can also email us at theevolutionofnow@gmail.com. There's no spaces in there at all. Just theevolutionofnow. And you can also like us on Facebook if you want. And yeah, you'll get the show every week will be posted on there, and you'll get a notification if you follow us on there. And yeah. Thank you guys for showing up this week, and it's good to be back. We really missed the show for the last 2 weeks, like we said earlier. What about you, Mike? Did you really miss the show? Probably not. Freaking
It's
damn
been
British
a very
people.
long week. I got a cold like a week ago and it completely knocked me sideways. Yeah. Do your thing. Go on. Just laugh it up.
Wait. Here it is. Here's the good one.
I want Britain to be back British.
That was Michael, and yeah, we even mentioned actually that Donald Trump posted some stuff on the Twitterverse from
He retweeted British terrorists.
Yeah, British terrorists by the name of Britain First, right? And he retweeted them, and even Theresa May, to her credit, was against Trump on this and everything.
My God. I've got to give people credit for being against terrorists. What the fuck is someone up to?
It's a sad world we live in these days, man. Sad world. But anyway, guys.
You're not pro-terrorism. Congratulations.
Yeah, you got to give her a little gold star or something, whatever. But thank you guys for showing up and listening to us talk about this topic. I don't know exactly what our next topic's going to be yet, but we will keep you guys posted. Next week we'll find out what the next topic is. But anyway, you guys have a great, great week, and you guys have last words?
Yeah, mixed economy.
Wow, that's just really sad, Mike.
Yeah,
Anything, Jordan? Anything?
Wow.
Okay, that's it. Your time's up. Goodbye.